You
Yeah,
had
your
a,
second question.
go ahead,
Second
Jim.
question is just what are the footprints of the three facilities? I mean, you could just stay on this slide here.
Sure. So the salt shed that has a footprint of about 94 feet by 275 feet. That's the salt shed and the lot itself. The Gowanus, the GCC and the composting space is still being configured. We are taking exactly what they have on site now and accounting for all their current needs and introducing that into the footprint that we see here. So we have 18,000 square feet, I believe, identified for that zone that will be required to incorporate their needs and functions. And the CSO tank is 4 million gallons, the blow tank, and the head house is similar in scale proportionally to what's happening up at Red Hook. We're still formulating the exact sort of configuration of the skin of that building, but you could see here how it compares to the salt lot.
Okay, that's very helpful. So my quick comment on that is based on the Google Earth that I've been looking at, GCC and big reuse are getting a lot more space than they have now. And I know the salt lot facility is getting a lot more space than they have now. And it's been explained to me why, but all this space is taken away from public space. So I wish that could be mitigated somehow.
We're trying to make that zone, the blue zone that you see there, as porous from a pedestrian perspective as possible. So hopefully there is no sort of, except for what's needed by DSNY or big reuse, hopefully there is no restrictive fence that's required, and maybe just some sort of, low hedge or something that prevents somebody from jumping over that to pull a carrot or something. But I think a lot of that space will seem like it's a public realm component.
Well, seem and is are two different things, but I'll stop.
Thanks.
Maybe Brad, do you want to go next?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, my name is Brad Vogel, and I am the captain of the Gowanus Stritters Canoe Club. And I was really hoping to be able to focus on good things, but I must say that I am deeply disappointed that after all of the input from dozens of people at the February meeting and lots of other public outreach and input, there is still no retention of the existing recreational boating access at the end of 2nd Avenue. And I just don't get it. I mean, of all of there's so many things going on this site. All it would take is one area that's about 10 feet wide, making a concrete ramp down to the water, a la the one at, say, Calvert Vaux Park, that would permit kayaks, canoes, rowboats to enter the water, and also safe egress for anyone who might fall into the canal. It's great that there's a kayak launch shown at the basin, but first and foremost, do no harm. If you can retain existing water access, it should absolutely be retained. I have been out canoeing on the canal recently, and it is increasingly a sheer steel bound waterway that is almost impossible for people to get out of if they fall in the water. So it's not just that we need one spot for water access, we need many spots for water access. So I strongly request that you rethink the plan and make the very small concession to retain water access for recreational boating at the foot of 2nd Avenue. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. I spoke a little bit to the many partners on this project that are kind of informing decision-making around water access points, and also some of the logistical considerations and concerns of the many partners on the team. And, I think when we assess the two locations, the 6th Street turning basin really rose to the top for its easier access, its protected nature, and the larger zone to be able to actually ADA ramp down to the water. This is something Parks Department is very interested in, having ADA access wherever access is provided. And with all of the other logistical and vehicular needs of the 2nd Avenue street end, it just doesn't have that same width of space. So that's how 6th Avenue got chosen. I think the team feels that I think we measured the distance between the two potential locations for the boat launch. And I definitely understand and hear your point that you're certainly advocating for multiple points of access along the water. They're, I think, approximately 500 feet apart. I don't think that's as the boat moves. I think that's more along the bird flies kind of distance. But I think the wider groups who are responsible for maintaining this space were interested in the 6th Street location. That's why it's showing up here tonight. I do think, though, there is some flexibility to begin to look at. Right now, we're showing that as like a canal overlook zone. And maybe there's an opportunity to think differently about how that overlook is configured. Maybe it could slope down more, maybe it could get closer. I certainly understand what you're saying about the wall of sheet pile and how to break that up and provide these gestures down to the water. Maybe it could be supplemented with other forms of emergency egress for safety. I think there's still room to continue exploring that street end. And I'm confident your comments will be considered for sure. There are many parties on this project. Maybe Layla?
Thanks. I really like how far the new designs have come. I think I appreciate some of the changes that you've made since the last meeting, and I just wanted to say that I really like the tidal wetland in Maritime Meadows area and the potential wetland shelf. I think that is a great idea to have a wetland shelf and wetland floating gardens. I do have a question about the edge that's shown as a white dotted line from the Lookout Gardens that goes all the way down to the outdoor class. Is that edge not going to be a soft edge? Or is that just how it's shown on the map as a dotted line?
You're talking about the white dotted line that
Yes.
maps the main canal side?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, currently we're proposing that the soft edge begin at the point, and that the bulkhead would be the edge condition along the main canal. And this is all through the greater bulkhead designs that have been underway and the coordination with EPA. So even this right now is still a draft proposal and in development, but the proposal is the bulkhead is broken at that point and the water is allowed in coming from the basin side.
Got it. Thanks.
Thank you. Louis?
Hi, thank you for the time you're taking for the presentation. It's really appreciated. We do, in fact, hope that you would be able to respond to the questions that were put into the chat in writing and have that posted into the YouTube channel so that we can see your actual responses to those particular questions. I hate to put words into Brad's mouth, but I think I am correct in saying that he's not opposing the idea of a major kayak launch on 6th. What he's saying is, let's keep an additional small kayak launch where it is right now for use. I don't see why you couldn't, in fact, have both, since the one is already there, and I don't see that it would be a major problem. For the kayak launch itself, I put into the chat a request that you do talk to the kayakers about the construction and how the launch itself should be architecturally situated, because quite often we find that ramps and things are totally unusable for recreational boaters, since the city doesn't seem to pay too much attention to what is needed by recreational boaters. And finally, I hope that some consideration could be given to having a actual boathouse established where on 6th Street, where the kayak launch is. I look maybe to Brad, who possibly could maintain such a location, and if not, perhaps we can find another nonprofit to maintain it. But it would really be nice to have a small kayak facility where boats could be stored and presentations, public presentations could be made right surrounding the area of the kayak launch. Thank you.
That's great feedback. Thank you. Corinne?
Hi, thanks for taking the questions. I wanted to echo some of Brad's concerns and understand more about what was happening at the end of 2nd Avenue and why it seemed like access there is being cut off in order to have a lookout garden, whereas maybe the goals of the lookout garden and the boat launch could both be accomplished with some more thought. So that was my main concern about this plan.
Thanks, Corinne. I wanted to ask Kevin Clark, because there was, I think Louis had made the comment about how the questions in the chat might be addressed. And do you have the answer to that?
Yeah, I've actually been discussing that with Alicia offline. I think we will issue a written response.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I do want to note that all of us presenting aren't able to always follow the chat as
Right.
Simultaneously, and then some of them require the DEP's direct answer, and so I think that's a great way of answering those.
Absolutely. We'll make it, and to make it very clear, all of the comments that are entered in the chat are being captured. So we will have access to those after the meeting.
Yeah. And I don't know, Kevin, if you're able to address some of just the comments around in terms of the 6th Street boat launch and the public access to the water, how will that be maintained over time, or if that's been determined to ensure that there is always public access to the water there as designed?
Yeah, so, I think in general, we're not envisioning a fence along 2nd Avenue restricting access to the site. There might need to be some control over hours, dusk to dawn, that sort of thing. But, I think it will remain, the intention is to keep it open to the public at all times. And then just, to further address some of the comments about the north end of 2nd Avenue, and, Gina, I think did a great job in just explaining why we think that 6th Street is a much better option. It's safer. It's kind of protected from the canal proper. There's more room to maneuver and get in the water safely. The north end of 2nd Avenue, not everybody might be aware, but there is a parking lot serving the corrections facility and the driveway access to that parking lot is very close to the edge of the bulkhead, and we need to be able to maintain that. So there's a lot of factors there that pointed us to the 6th Street turning basin as the best option for boating access.
Thanks, Kevin. Teddy, have a comment?
Cool, yeah, thank you. We had a question about the shared street. And I think we saw like an example of like a different type of shared street, but we'd love to hear more about like what this could look like and how is it different from the access drive. I think at the last meeting, a bunch of people were like talking about limiting the amount of like cars on that street, because if they hit somebody they could die. So yeah, just wanted to hear more about that, but glad to see the shared street on there.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Teddy. I can certainly begin to address that. A reminder that it's all very preliminary and all the different agencies are reviewing. But the goal, I think, here would be to make sure that, first of all, vehicular access is required out to that beige turnaround zone. And that's for a couple of reasons. One is to make sure that both the GCC and Big Reuse have the ability to have some amount of vehicular access, like to move compost around, access the facilities, But importantly, it's also to maintain the CSO tank. And so that gray zone above where it says shared street is part of the tank access plan and needs to be drivable and allow for vehicular traffic there to do different maintenance functions on top of the tank. So we would like to, we don't see, many other users using that space. So we do think it will be just by nature of the programs at the end of that access drive, relatively limited in vehicular access. And that's why we propose the shared street concept to really expand the public realm. So the area shown in yellow could have many different conditions. It could have a difference in paving material to feel more pedestrian and less like a hot black asphalt surface. It could be a curbless environment, so it feels more like a plaza, and there's subtle demarcations to define where the vehicles can go and can't go. I think there's many different ways to design and distinguish that. They'll probably have to, follow a lot of the agency rules and material palettes, but you certainly see examples of that happening in many places in New York City, and so. Especially with COVID, we see more and more examples of that. So we think it's a real viable opportunity to really expand the sense of the park. Because I mentioned it before, but our last plan had that vehicular cul-de-sac extending into the bioretention area on the plan today. And we were able to pull it back and limit the vehicular access there. But if there's certain design conditions you would like to see, like particular materials, we'd love to hear more. I think Lisa has a comment.
Yes, it's actually the same thing. The composting site is where people drop off their composting, right?
That's right.
Yes. And will they be driving up to it?
There will be vehicular access for drop-offs, mostly by the GCC that is picking up elsewhere, but there will be vehicular access. That's not just limited.
So residents of the community who drop off their stuff are going to be coming with their cars to drop off composting.
Yeah, the hope is that we are promoting the pedestrian access, but we will have a vehicular route. We're working with GCC and Big Reuse to meet their needs and what they see as their service to their customers.
I'm just trying to understand who's going to be bringing vehicles into there and how many. You were talking about trucks coming in and servicing the tanks. How often is that? Is that once a year for a week, or is that every day? And what time of day is it?
The DEP's access to the top of tank will be very limited, maybe once a year, but not much more. Really, the access is for Big Reuse and their vehicles. There will be maybe daily deliveries, mainly on the weekends, of composting that they pick up elsewhere at sites throughout Brooklyn and bring them here. And GCC, they will have operational vehicles accessing their site for additional drop-offs, wood chips, and whatever. So they will be the main users of this shared access alley, besides the SMY, who will be coming in about a third of the way in and then entering the salt lot.
Right. The salt lot is all within the parameters of the fencing, and the main access is from 2nd Avenue, I assume.
That's correct. That's correct.
So what I'm concerned about is parking on that street and parking from civilians and from city trucks. And also how often city trucks are going to be making deliveries on a Saturday when the park is overflowed. You know, I live over near Brooklyn Bridge Park, and it's just spilling over with people at all times. So people are going to start walking on that street. Is that a truck route that they're going to start walking on?
I wouldn't particularly call it a truck route. It's for truck access. It's a main reason we are trying to bring the entry points for pedestrians in and around the perimeter of the site. We still will work with the agencies at hand to make sure that's a shared street and serve the public good as much as their operational needs. So there's a lot, like Gina said, we have to review and evaluate, but it is a serious focus for the team.
Are there sidewalks on that street?
There's a sidewalk on the north side of the street currently planned.
Because, you know, if the park is crowded, people will walk on that street.
Oh, I know. My son's going to ride his bike down that street. So
Exactly.
I'm certainly aware that it needs to be safe.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
What about David?
Hi, two comments and a question. It's interesting. I have a pretty good sense of how the CSO facility is going to work, and probably because I saw the one at the head of the canal. I have a very good sense of how the salt lot's going to work, given the description. I have zero sense of how big reuse and GCC space is going to work, because it's just a white rectangle with part of it carved out. And I would ask that next time you come to us with a plan. And I would like to know, my question wasn't answered before, how that footprint compares to their current footprint. We're hearing about the constituencies of the GCC and big reuse and DSNY and CSO, but the public is a constituency here as well. And I'm really advocating for as much public space as we can get. So that's comment number one. Comment number two, which Michelle Delauz, I think, brought up last time, was the idea of a community space on this site somewhere. Something that my group has supported. And then my question is, where is the closest public bathroom?
That's a good question, David. I don't know if I have the exact location of the closest public bathroom. But
If someone's way out there at the community gathering space, I mean, and they have kids, it seems like there ought to be a comfort station.
And I do think it ties into what you're talking about with the Gowanus Canal Conservancy space, which I think is probably, I'm just totally speculating here, but probably a bit, well, I think both Big Reuse and Gowanus Canal Conservancy will be quite porous, or at least that's how we've had some early conversations. The reason it is a big white box right there right now is because it hasn't been designed, and that those conversations are in progress. But your comments are helpful, and I'm sure they have many of the same questions. And I think it's a question that we should talk to the GCC in particular, who does a lot of outreach and education on bathroom facilities they will plan and host and need in the future. So I think it's a great point to discuss further.
Thank you.
Teddy, did you have another question or comment?
Yeah, sorry, just real quick to kind of go back to Lisa's point, but I think David brought up a great point as well, and I second the need for a restroom nearby, a public restroom. But I really agree with a lot of what Lisa was asking about for what are the restrictions going to be on access to that road, and just thinking about whether there'll be time restrictions or actual physical restrictions. You could have a bollard that has some kind of remote device so that only people who are with Big Reuse or the salt lot or the GCC are able to get in, and that might prevent some of the issues of having anyone in their car on that street parking there, or yeah, especially if the park is busy. But yeah, I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm hearing a desire for keeping the access along the access drive as limited as possible to the vehicles. Yeah. Okay, Louis again?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, just to repeat the requirement for public facilities, but in addition to which some water stations are needed as well. As we all know, a safe park is one that's heavily used, and if you don't have public facilities nor public ability to water, you'll cut down on the amount of traffic that will be using this particular area. In regard to the to the outdoor classroom, I would urge some consideration be given to running a community structure, doesn't have to be large, which would also be an ecological classroom and available year-round for educational purposes.
Louis, are there places on the site plan where you feel like that would be most
Well, you've
interesting or
got marked
appropriate?
an outdoor environmental area at the point there.
Yeah,
And I don't know how large that is, but the community building does not have to be particularly large.
noted. Okay, thank you. Great. Any other kind of comments or points of feedback? I'm looking through the chat now. Louis, you put your hand back up?
Yeah, since there are no other hands.
Yeah, keep it coming. Keep
I
it
had a whole
coming.
bunch of stuff, but the one thing I wanted to bring out was the safety of people who might not just fall into the water, but might overturn in the water itself and might require rescuing. And I wish you'd take a leaf out of Hudson River Park, where they have established rings and ladders, etc., along its river edge for the purposes of allowing safety egress from the water itself.
That's great. And I did see in the main chat the comment of reaching out to the judges for more specific design guidelines around some of those features or the water access features. And I'm sure DEP is taking a note of that in the comment and response. It sounds like a good idea. Gary has a comment.
Yeah, I'll just break in here. Thank you, but it would be a first in the city if the boaters themselves would be able to produce some sort of a coordination of architectural use of a dock. Thank you so much.
Hi, hello.
Hi, Gary.
I would just like to talk about water conditions, as in boat-in conditions in the canal. I get incredibly frustrated when they're talked about in ways that are just not factual. The entire canal is, without a doubt, the safest water conditions I've ever paddled in New York City. I've paddled every single water body in New York City. I've raced around the entire Manhattan Island. I've entered at public launch sites in the most dangerous places I've ever tried to enter. And I've asked why to park rangers. I've argued with them when I've tried to launch in safe places, and they've told me to launch directly under bridges. This is without a doubt, anywhere in this canal is really, really safe. There's no current, barely, about 1.5 knots. There's very little wind exposure, the long reaches of the canal. Sometimes when the wind lines up just right, it can get a little gusty, but that's about it. There's no fetch. So the actual conditions of the water surface does not change that much. There's no wave action. And of course, we all know there's very little commercial traffic, except when the dredging is happening. So anywhere in the canal is really, really safe. The things that make the canal unsafe are the pollution, and primarily the CSO, which is in the water. The rest of the pollution is generally on the bottom. So unless you're digging around in it, you're not going to get exposed. That's the actual real conditions in the whole length of the canal. Until you start to get out into the outer reaches where it starts to open up and you get more wind exposure, primarily wind exposure. That's what causes fetch, causes wave action, causes harder, more difficult conditions. But that's it. I really appreciate the ADA kayak launch, but not at the sacrifice of traditional launches where somebody can hoist a board or a canoe or a kayak on their shoulder and exit down a soft shoreline or enter into the water in a soft shoreline. And as regards public safety, the canal is a sheer wall. It's becoming more and more sheer everywhere. There are no ladders, there's no handholds, there's nothing for anybody to hold on to even keep themselves afloat. Not even people will fall in there and they will exhaust themselves until they drown. I'm sure it's probably happened somewhere. Some people probably find it. But that's what's being built, okay? So if we can address that situation, the sheer walls, and create more functionally usable shorelines, that would help everybody and the biodiversity. And it would be actually accurate. It would be truthful and accurate. Thank you.
Gary, I think our room is ending, but I'm just curious, your comments are really helpful. If the 6th Street boat launch had not only the ADA accessible kayak launch with the gangway, which is needed for the ADA piece of it, but it also included a zone where there was more of that slope directly into the water, would that be beneficial?
Yeah, I think that would be great if somebody could, carry a board on their shoulder or any small vessel. I think it should be encouraged. Absolutely. Real water access, people's engagement with the water should be encouraged. The more they care about it, the better we will be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Louis, final minute.
Yeah, I realize that. Yeah, just to echo that comment, a type of beach is, or a type of beach for human power boaters is always preferable for access as to any other way of getting in and out of the water. Always. It's enables, for safety reasons, a large amount of people to get off if necessary, and a large amount of people to get in if when we want to do it.
I just wanted to chime in real quick. I have my hand up. That
I'm
just changing a diaper right now on my 4-month-old. But I just wanted to say that wherever the bathroom is, and there should be a bathroom, I agree with some of the comments that it should be integrated into some of the existing buildings and be accessible from the outside. It should be a teaching bathroom. So, I'm not saying a glass bottom boat, but something that kind of demonstrates how CSOs work and what the CSO facility is for. If you're contributing to it, you can have some games. And I also wanted to put in a plug for Keith Goddard, a designer I studied with, who actually was going to do a museum at the DEP water facility near Brooklyn Bridge Park over a decade ago. And I think there's a lot of good opportunities for exhibitions and things like that to kind of explain how things work. He did a great thing on how the Brooklyn Bridge was built. And I think something like that, that's interactive in some of these, public restrooms would be great.
What did you say,
Perfect. I think that's a lovely comment to make, that the bathroom should be educational, because obviously it should be on this site with the overall goals and program here. So what a great idea. So unless anyone has final comments, Gary, is your hand still up, or?
No, sorry, I'm
okay. Oh, no worries. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just want to really thank everyone again for your thoughts this evening. And, we're working hard to balance all the different needs, and a reminder that the site, in addition to being hopefully a world-class public space and water access point, is also industrial or series of industrial facilities that need to be maintained and operated as such. So we're working to balance all of those concerns, and we'll all gather back in the main room.
Okay, I think we have everyone back. Okay, so I just wanted to end with talking about our next steps. Anna, if you want to go to the next slide. So I want to thank everybody for coming tonight and taking the time. We were all saying like it's such beautiful weather outside. We were worried no one was going to come, so we appreciate everybody and all the really meaningful feedback that you've given us tonight. We're really pleased to be able to share where we're at. You know, and as we continue through this process, we will have more opportunities for these types of meetings. Our next public meeting in this sort of public engagement meeting style will be in the fall. But in the interim, we're going to start moving through the community board process. And so our next step with that will be presenting the salt shed designs to Community Board 6's Parks and Environmental Protection Committee in June. We had a lot of great feedback tonight, as I said. If something else occurs to you or you want to follow up on something, you can reach us at the email address listed here. And these, the main meeting and the breakout rooms were both recorded, and those will be available on our YouTube site, which is youtube.com/NYC-water. So again, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate all of the feedback. You know, as this is coming together, it's just really important to understand folks' priorities, and we really appreciate your familiarity with this area and your expertise. So thank you all for joining us tonight, and we hope to see you again soon at our next meetings.
Could we get a brief synopsis of what each group has contributed?
So I don't think that we have time for that this evening. As I said, everything's going to be up on our YouTube page, and you'll be able to see all of the notes have been taken down. And then what our team does is they combine all of that stuff, and then we'll be able to also report back on that at the next meeting. So thank you guys for everything, and I hope that everyone is taking care. Good night.
Go.